Value per second. When I started short form content, my goal was how can I compress as much value into as little time as possible. Now I want to progress to long form content, but I want the podcast that I wish I could listen to. I don't want the background story or where you went to school or all this useless stuff. I want to get straight into the meat, the actual tactics that are working right now in this crazy changing market. I want to get to what is the edge right now, that alpha that keeps you ahead of the pack. Because building Culture Kings to a $600 million brand is because I was always hunting that edge, finding what was that latest Facebook ad hack? What was this other way to do creative marketing? What was the tools and how did you plug them together to be able to stay ahead of everyone else? For this episode, I've got one of the best media buyers on the planet, Robbie Miller. He is literally goated behind some of the fastest growing, biggest brands. He has been in over 1,000 ad accounts. In this episode, we dive deep into how does media buying look like in this new AI first world. And he breaks down some of the biggest game changers that even for myself, of spending hundreds of millions of dollars on ads myself for years, I had those light bulb moments of like, oh my God, I know that will work. I'm doing that right now. Welcome to The Edge, where we dive into tactics that you can implement right now that moves the needle. Okay, welcome to The Edge podcast. This is always the podcast that I wanted to listen to. Real operators, real tactics, real detail that works right now. In this fast changing world, shit gets dated so quick, but if you can be on the edge, that's where I made all the big choices of Culture Kings. That's all, Facebook ads in 2010, first doing TikTok ads, Snapchat ads, is always being early is where I got that edge that enabled me to grab market share. And so we don't go into too much background. I just bring on true figures of authority, and I have got Robbie Miller here, who's probably been in more ad accounts than anyone in the world, which is so like he's out here in Australia. So he's so excited to have you on. You've been in, obviously Davie's, the Udi, Hudson, probably fastest growing e-com company of all time, or up there. And let's get into it. Yeah. So what's working right now?
Yeah, I love it. I appreciate the invite out here and everything. I'd say there's been a lot of stuff that's changed, obviously, from, way back in the day and e-com to now, stuff is so radically different. What I'd say is I probably had the biggest sample size of brands, or one of the biggest sample size of brands anyway, in terms of I've done over 1,000 different ad account audits in the last 2 years, right? And so I've seen a lot of stuff, a lot of brands win, a lot of brands lose, a lot of brands stay in the middle, right? Yeah. I think something that's fundamentally true, though, at least the common denominator across all the brands that I've seen actually really win is two things. And I think understanding that from a first principles level then makes everything else a lot clearer in terms of what you're doing more tactically in all the other areas of e-com. Yeah. Number one is they have an exceptional product. They have an exceptional product flywheel. They're dropping new products that people love, either vertically, so for returning customer revenue, or expanding these horizontal product categories, unlocking a greater TAM, right? Yeah. Two is they have incredible infrastructure within the business to produce a really high level of content. Those are the two fundamental truths across everything so essentially dumbing it down, make good products and make good content is the game, right? And so obviously it's not as the difficulty is actually going about doing that, but specifically from the Facebook ad side, right, which is my background, right now more than ever, when I talk with a lot of people, the main thing people want to talk to me about is, ad account structure. They want to talk to me about even you hear the advice, creative is king, and people take that as what angles do I use? What formats do I use? How do I make hooks better, et cetera, right? And not that stuff isn't important, but what I think people miss is that the actual job to be done by founders, in my opinion anyway, is the actual work on the creative infrastructure itself, right? So it's the people and the processes that you're using to create content in the first place is the job to be done. It's not what ad am I creating? It's how am I making ads in the first place, right? Yes. And that's the, I think people just don't like see that. That's always the biggest feedback I give people is like, if I was a brand founder, which I'm not, but if I was, right? Basically, when I wake up every morning, my job is to figure out how do I create new products that people love and how do I create more, better, different content. That's the goal, right? That's the North Star. And so I think those two things have been fundamentally true, like forever, really. I think now so more than ever though, at least on the content side, right? I want to make sure I'm as tactical and actionable as I can, right? The demands of how much content that you need is now more than ever, right? And so in the past, you used to, kind of the strategy on Facebook was we're going to try and find this kind of Superman ad. So we're going to test a lot of different stuff. This stuff works. Okay, we're going to split test even more variables. We're kind of going to hyper optimize this ad. So we may have like, hook, body, CTA, and we're testing a million different combinations of this to try and create the perfect ad, right? Nowadays, it is much more so like, instead of us needing 10 ads that work, we need like 1,000 ads that work. Like it's purely, in my opinion, like if I was a founder nowadays, my sole focus would just be how can I create more creative volume? Because, one thing that I'll preface is like a lot of times people do hear this advice because I'm not the only person that says this, obviously, right? And especially over the last year, the creative volume piece has been preached more and more and more. If people do go wrong with it where they just launch 1,000 ads that are all really trash and like none of them actually perform, right? But I think the thing, especially for brands who don't really have really good creative infrastructure, is that like to create a good ad, you have to have the skill of making ads in the first place. And the way that you acquire the skill of making ads is by making a lot of ads.
Yes.
Right? And so when people ask me, because as you would know, like when people ask you for advice, so much of it is nuanced depending on like the situation. Like it's very, I need to know a lot of information to be really specific with the advice that I give people, right? But in general, when people ask me about creative, I generally tell them, your only goal should just be figure out how to make way more ads. Because through that process, and not only like if you, like some people that may be watching this, right? It may be literally just them. Like it may be like your system is like, how can you make more ads? Some people, they may have entire teams and departments, right? But what I've found is that like a lot of times I may be consulting with a brand and they may have like a pretty large creative team, right? And they are pursuing this really high creative volume threshold. And it's like, stuff hasn't been working. They haven't been able to find like any new winners. And my advice in that scenario is actually let's reduce volume. Like let's actually cut volume in half for a moment. And the feedback I always get from the creative team is they get so excited. They're like, dude, with all this time I have now, I'm going to make the greatest ads. Like it's going to be excellent. Right. And so the point there is like, as you pursue volume, first of all, your team gets more skill. You and your team gets more skilled at actually making creative. And then when there comes a time, like if your hit rate in the ad account does start to go down, you're not finding new stuff, you're not scaling, right? The answer to that, in my opinion, is generally it's actually reduce volume. Let's use all the skills and all the capacity that we just built to make exceptional, a fewer amount of exceptional ads that usually fix and correct the hit rate issue. But you can only do that if you're pursuing volume in the first place, right? And so that would be my biggest kind of, if someone were to ask me like one thing, like how do you succeed on Facebook nowadays? It's like you need the creative infrastructure within the business to produce a really high volume of content. Like that's the goal, right?
And so what about AI ads in that? Because that's obviously the easiest way to just get bulk volume. But what's your opinion on the quality of them? Have you seen them rip? Not yet. It's growing. What's your thoughts on AI?
Yeah. So like when we're talking about, okay, now like within creative infrastructure, right? Like what does that mean? Taylor Holiday has a good bit on this as well, but I think you should be approaching creative similar in a way that you'd approach like manufacturing a product, right? And when you're manufacturing a product, you're trying to drive costs down, drive quality up.
Yeah.
And you're trying to come out with new products that you haven't necessarily launched before, right? And so for where AI plays a big role, and this is obviously the cost per ad piece of it. And so what I think is a really good metric that people don't know, like I've almost never talked to someone who actually knows this number, is what is your cost per ad? So like, what does it actually cost me to manufacture a piece of creative, right? And like how you get this is like, what is like total OpEx or percentage of spend or whatever what you're paying to your creative team, right? Divide that by how many ads that you're making per month, right? That's your cost per ad, right? And you can measure that. You can measure how much am I paying for a piece of creative. Like in my opinion, where a lot of this AI stuff is useful is that like you want to look at your creative pipeline as an assembly line. So like there's from start to finish, ideations. You have to come up with what is the ad going to be about. There's scripting, there's briefing, there's filming, there's editing, there's launching, right? Like, so those are the different steps of making it creative. And each one of those steps, there's some form of AI system nowadays that you can plug in to expedite, right? And so like in my experience anyway, I haven't had a lot of success with just like a one-click, oh, AI makes all of our stuff. Like, I don't think it's there yet. And to be honest, I'm skeptical that it ever will be at that point. I think there's always going to be some form of alpha in having a human involved in that process.
Yes.
But my advice to people generally is, I ask them, why can't we go make 10 times more ads tomorrow? And usually the answer is like, I don't know what to make, or it may be I don't have enough content, or it may be my editors can't do it. And so the goal here is like, figure out what the constraint in the creative process is, like which step is the thing that's constraining you from making more ads. With OpenClaw, with Claude Code, with, I mean, even just like simple Claude projects, it's so easy now to build these systems that that deconstrain you in each one of those steps, right? And so that's one component of it. The other component is like, nowadays more than ever as well, like you want a lot of ads, but you want ads that are very diverse from one another as well, right? And so like a lot of times, if you are just making, like I know people who have kind of these big AI static ad engines where it's just like, they have a thing churning out like 10,000 ads. My experience is like you launch all that, like none of it. It's like what again, I know there's some people that make it work. I'm sure that it does work to an extent, right? I've had a great experience with that. And I think partially the reason is because when you're making creative, you want to have it come from multiple sources. Like, so creative diversity, like when people say that, and as people would know, like the Andromeda update on Meta, that's been a buzzword in the e-com space for so long and everything, right? It's like you want ads that are very diverse from one another, right? How people generally think about going about doing that is like, okay, well, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to make an ad, and I'm going to make it with different angles, right? So it's like, I'm going to write 2 different scripts, 2 different messaging, right? Or I'm going to use different ad formats, right? And obviously, yes, you can create diversity in that way. The much more effective way to create diversity, in my opinion, is to use what I refer to as like a decentralized creative team. Right? And what I mean by decentralized creative team is in the past, it would be Simon or Robbie, like the VP of marketing or creative strategist, head of creative, whatever you want to call them, right? Sit down and everything runs through them. So like, yes, they may have people they have graphic designers and editors and people under them helping, but everything is essentially running through a singular person. The issue with that is that if I sat down and made an ad and you sat down and made an ad, we'd likely create 2 very different ads simply because we're 2 different people. Like I've had different experiences than you've seen other brands than I've seen. And so the way that you actually get true diversity is that you get creative from multiple different sources. Like you get it from, yes, I have an AI system that helps specifically churn out like static ads. Also like tactical tip, using 11 Labs voiceovers and just B-roll is also a really effective thing to do. Like
those are just for a creator army, B-roll with voiceovers, absolutely printed.
Like the AI UGC, I don't think is quite there yet. I still prefer one system, like tactically, for example, maybe like a really well-organized Google Drive with all of your B-roll, and or Air.ink is also really helpful for this. It's just like really expensive. So if you're a large brand, you can afford it. If you're not, it's like
what's that, like a CR, like
Air.ink is content? It's a content management system. It allows you to find assets a lot easier. So things get tagged with AI, like you can search in a search bar and like things pop up a lot quicker and stuff. So the point is you want to have like an easily searchable and findable content management system for editors to pull from.
I'm going to build that with Claude Code.
Exactly. You probably swim it up with Claudebot now. You want to have a content management system that's like easily searchable and findable. And then you're using 11 Labs voiceovers and you're using Claude to write the script. Claude script, 11 Labs voiceover, get an editor to mash up the B-roll that you have from that content management system with the 11 Labs voiceovers. That's one like creative factory I refer to it as, right? Another creative factory may be the affiliate creator method. So like the Hudson method of Comfrt, right? Like that, I think specifically this one is particularly interesting because I think it's still very young. I don't think that many brands have figured it out, really. I think there's probably a handful of brands in the world who actually know what they're doing, but specifically like not just the TikTok shop. So it's like TikTok shop has been around for a while. My experience with it, especially, is it's been very hit or miss. Where like there's certain types of products that succeed very well on TikTok shop, and there's certain products that don't. But I think the bigger opportunity is leveraging, essentially paying creators a percentage of attributed revenue that their ads generate for you. So like I'm a content creator, I make content for Culture Kings and give it to you guys. You guys run it in the ad account and you give me a cut of whatever it makes.
Yes.
Right. And I think that's so effective because
on what attribution though?
So that there's multiple platforms out there that do this. How they typically use this is it's a last click cookie. So it's a direct click to buy. Right. Yeah. And so arguably like that's where it gets messy.
Because now they got engagement, as well as view through, but engagement.
Yeah.
But yes, you just be strict last click and especially if the video's doing it, then that is so clearly the attribution.
100%. Like if anything, I think last click is actually probably like a bit unfair to the creators a bit because because
there's so much. It would have planted the seed and the static comes along and cleans it up.
Exactly. So like, to be honest, like, cause I'll talk a lot of times and there's multiple platforms that do this. I have one specifically that I use. But like, cause I'll talk a lot of times and I'm like 10% of revenue, like I'm getting 10% of revenue off of the ads attributed. But the entire point is that like, first of all, if you're structuring the ad account in the right way, those creators aren't going to even spend unless they're profitable for you, right? Is one. And so you essentially have zero cost associated with making creative. Like there's no, we're now entering a world where there is, and it gets a bit on the media buying side, which I can get into. There is now a world where there is zero risk in testing an asset. Like you can create an asset and there's no downside in launching that in the ad account. However, there's infinite amounts of upside of it working, right? And so in an affiliate creative world,
unlimited shots on goal.
Yeah, exactly. And so if you have, 100, I mean, you take it to the extreme, Comfrt has, I think I was at Hudson's event, I said, I think he has like 500 affiliates that he works closely with for Facebook creative. And then he obviously has many, many more on TikTok Shop, right? I mean, I think he said, again, don't quote me on this, apologies, Hudson, if I'm misstating you, but I believe what he said like 500 creators making 30 pieces of content a day. They launch it all into the ad account, all of it under bid caps, because I chatted with his media buyer as well. And like, so he's launching, what does that work out to be? 15,000 pieces of content a day in the account. And then you have this brand launching, 5 ads a week. You can obviously see how drastically different the outcome is going to be, right? And so if I were a betting man, I really think that the future is probably really going to be the affiliate creator method and a form of an AI system. I think like OpenClaw and everything, it's progressing so quickly that like back in the day, I went really deep into Claude projects and a lot of like context engineering around like avatar context and offer context and mining customer reviews and things like that. Nowadays, it's much more like Claude Code and OpenClaw kind of took over versus the Claude projects. But I think the affiliate creator method in particular is going to be has more longevity because I think there's and again, when you forecast too far out in the future, who knows what's going to happen. But I think there's going to become an inflection point where like everyone's going to recognize that the majority of content that they see online is AI. And so I think if there's a world where you're able to show you're not using AI and it's a legitimate person.
And I am sure AI like fake AI will get regulated. I think that's like a total like 1,000%. I've seen people doing it. It's like, this is just a fucking scam. Like they're not saying that. I've seen, but what I would love to get to is like that volume, but then from the media buying structure of how you test that volume. Because I think that's a very nuanced part that people don't realize that drives me nuts when I'm dealing with these enterprise brands at Creator Army and, they got the creative director nitpicking a video where it's just like, fuck. And I'd love you to get in the media buying, the actual structure, big caps, cost caps. And I love what you said before about how you feel that creative director, that brand, what people think the brand is dead.
Yeah, no, 100%. And this has been the big evolution in the ad account. And it's been around for a couple of years. It's taken a bit different of forms, right? But how most people think of like, when they create an ad, they need to test that ad, right? So it's like, okay, I create an ad, I put a couple $100 behind it. If it works, I scale it up. If it doesn't work, I scale it down. The issue with that, when we enter a world where we're launching hundreds, if not thousands of ads a week, if not per day, is that every ad has a cost associated with testing it. And even the best brands that you'll speak to may have a 20% hit rate, a 10% hit rate, a 15%. What I mean by hit rate is like what percentage of your ads actually work, right?
Yes.
And again, that number I'm sure there's some guy out there who has a 50% hit rate, right? But that's not what I see.
Yes.
And so if you're testing 100 ads a day, 80% of them don't work, you're losing a lot of money by testing this creative. And so sometimes I'll meet with people and they're like, dude, Robbie, I did what you said to do. Like I'm launching so many ads, but ever since I did that, my account's tanking, right? And the reason is because you're running the ad account the wrong way, right? And the way that you should be running the ad account nowadays, in my opinion anyway, because this is obviously contentious to a point, you should 100% be running primarily cost controls in your ad account, right? And so when I say cost controls, a lot of people who aren't versed in the media buying space don't know what I'm referring to specifically, all right? They don't even know this exists. And I tell them this exists, and they're like, why were we always doing that, man? Like, why were we doing this from day one, right? And so how a traditional Facebook campaign works, how people know it, right, is that I set a budget. So I set $1,000 a day, and it goes and spends $1,000 a day, right? And if the ROAS is good, maybe I scale it up, and then I scale it up to 1,500, right? And if it's bad, I scale it down, right? So you set a budget and it just spends the budget. A cost control is where you give Facebook a budget, but you also give Facebook what your target efficiency is, so what your target cost per purchase or target ROAS may be, right? And some complexity. I'll hit on the nuance of that in a second, right? But say I'm a brand, I need a $50 CAC to be profitable, right? I tell Facebook I require a $50 CAC on this ad set, right? What Facebook then does is Facebook tries to spend as much money as it can while maintaining a $50 CAC. And so what that means is that if that ad set isn't able to, you may create a new ad set with new ads, right? So we just got a bunch of affiliate creator content. We're launching it in the ad account, right? This content, none of it may work, right? Like there's a world where none of this stuff works, especially when we're pursuing really high volume. Like a lot of times, a lot of those ads don't work, right? If I have a $50 cost cap on that ad set and that ad set isn't able to spend at a $50 cost per purchase, it just won't spend, right? If that ad set is able to spend $1,000 a day at a $50 CAC, it'll spend $1,000 a day. If it's able to spend $10,000 a day at a $50 CAC, it'll spend $10,000 a day, right? And so the point is that the two things. A, there's now no cost associated with testing a creative. So a lot of times I'll talk with someone, it's like, I'm a smaller brand I'm only spending a couple thousand a day or something in the account, right? So it's like, how am I supposed to test all this stuff? Well, you can test it with these cost controls because there is no cost associated with testing an asset. Like you deploy the asset. If that asset is going to work, it's going to spend money. If it's not going to work, it's not going to spend money, right? And it's as simple as that.
But isn't there still a limit on the ads?
So
the ad set?
Yeah. So there's two actual hard limits that you'll have in Facebook when you're running this stuff. I don't bring this up usually because if you're hitting this, it's like, okay, you're doing very good if you actually hit the limitations of what Facebook allows you to run. So there's two limits. First of all, you can only run 150 ads per ad set. And in some accounts, it's still 50 ads. They recently updated that to 150. Two, there's actually a hard cap on how many active ads you can have on at one time per Facebook page. And so for most people, I believe it's between 500 and 1,000. If you're spending a lot of money, it will go even higher than that. So that's how Comfrt and them can launch so many ads.
Yeah.
Two tactical tips around that. So if you guys are hitting the ad limit, here's two things you could do. First thing, start using flexible ads instead of uploading each creative manually. So what I mean by flexible is that this used to be called dynamic creative. If you guys remember in the old days, but you can upload 10 creatives into one ad slot and Facebook will rotate those 10 creatives through. And so it you're effectively doing the same thing as launching 10 ads. Yeah. However, it only counts as one ad slot. And so that's an especially helpful thing to do when you have variations of a creative. So if you're still making hook variations and things like that, use a flexible ad, put all the variations within that flexible ad, and then it'll only count as one ad slot. That'll save you a lot of ad space. Two is you can have multiple Facebook pages as well. So one thing, a brand that I work with, they have their brand page, and then they have their niche, and then it's the education. And then they have these other different types, and High Smile, I remember back in the day, they'd have High Smile and then High Smile results, and then High Smile creators, and they'd have all these other pages, right? And so it applies on the page level, not the ad account level. But back to the cost control discussion, right? The first of all, why this is so effective nowadays, and why, in my opinion, the vast majority of accounts that I run almost exclusively on cost controls. There's some nuances to that. But it's because it allows you to test creative much more efficiently. If you're going to go spend $100, $200 behind every single ad that you create, you're going to be out tens of thousands of dollars if you're testing in really high volume. The other issue is that, in my opinion, so one reason why people don't use cost controls is that they'll be like, dude, the ads didn't spend. How do I know that these ads, or they go, Robbie, something's broken. The cost cap, it didn't spend, right? that is the feature of the structure. Like, so if you launch a new creative, right, and that creative doesn't spend, right, the reason it's not spending is because it's not able to spend while hitting the cost of purchase or ROAS target that you set for Facebook to achieve, right? And people go, well, how do I know that it's not going to work if it didn't spend budget, right? So my answer to that is A, duplicate it in another campaign, force budget behind it without a cost cap, and see if it works. I've done that time and time and time and time and time again. I almost never see a scenario where forcing budget through a cost control campaign that didn't spend actually results in ads that are actually winning, right? And so that would be my feedback there. And so long story short, it allows you to just test such a high volume of creative incredibly efficiently. Two, it allows you to scale so effectively as well, because like the hardest question I've always had to answer, and that to be honest, I still don't have an answer to when someone asks me, is like, Robbie, how much should I scale by? Like, okay, last week, we have a 2.5 ROAS target or 2.5 CAC target or MER, whatever, right? How much should I scale up this next week by, right? The issue is that I don't have an answer, you don't have an answer, no one has an answer. And the reason no one has an answer is because there is no linear return on ad spend. So what I mean by that is, if you increase budget 20%, it's not as if ROAS then it drops 20%.
Yes.
It's not linear. Like it's a sloped line, and that sloped line changes every day, every hour. Like every ad, it constantly changes. And so there is no definitive answer to how much should I scale up by, right? And what I find is like when you use these cost controls, Facebook is so much more efficient at knowing how much money to spend than you are. Like I had a client who, this is over Christmas, coming into Christmas, like we had a really big drop kind of the week of, and even Christmas Day was really, really poor. We had multiple campaigns in the account, but there's one campaign, this was a cost control campaign. Christmas Day had spent like $500, which was like really low for this account traditionally, right? Boxing Day spent $9,000. The day following it spent $32,000. The day following it spent $67,000. The day following it spent $54,000. And like it stabilized at that, and all while maintaining the ROAS target that we had established, right? And so the point there is like, there is no.
So what did you have, like $100,000 budget on something?
Yeah. So okay. I'll also be very tactical with this, right? And so specifically for most of you guys that are watching this, I'd recommend you use a cost cap or cost per result goal. Specifically, what this will be called in Ads Manager. It'll be campaign bid strategy in the campaign settings, cost per result goal. Right. There's two other ones. There's a ROAS goal and there's a bid cap. They function slightly differently. I can go into the differences if you'd like me to. But for most of you guys, if you never use cost controls, especially as well, just use a cost per result goal to start with. All right. How you want to manage this is, first of all, or how I manage this personally anyway, is typically I have one campaign per product per country. Sometimes I'll consolidate countries together within the same campaign if they have the same gross margins. All right. And so the rules here is like, if your gross margins vary by product or by country, it needs to be a separate campaign. Or if your inventory position varies per product per country, it also needs to be a separate campaign. And the reason for that is because you're going to therefore need a different cost per result goal. And so you're going to have to account for that. Right? Within that, let's say we're selling one product and we're in Australia, right? And by product, it also may be product category. So if you're clothing, it may be like, tops and bottoms. Like it doesn't have to be, it's not per SKU per se. Right? Within that campaign, right, you're going to want to be running ad sets that are, first of all, and so this is one thing I should hit on especially as well, the attribution setting, which for those of you who aren't aware, your attribution setting is how Facebook essentially takes credit for the sales that it says it's driving, all right? And so by default, Facebook has a 7-day click, 1-day view attribution setting, which means if someone clicks on your ad and buys within 7 days, or views your ad and buys within 1 day, Facebook credits that sale and optimizes around that sale, right? The issue here is that what you'll find is that the sales that come through that 1-day view attribution setting are not actually like real incremental Shopify sales in the vast majority of cases. And so like what you can do is like you can run, when you run these incrementality tests with these like GeoLift tools, right? What you'll find is that this 1-day view revenue isn't actually real. And so you can break down and view, if you go to columns, compare attribution settings, select the 7-day click, hit apply. What you'll see is it'll show you your 7-day click, 1-day view revenue next to your 7-day click revenue only. Right? You need to be really careful with that because I'll talk to brands. This is especially pertinent if A, you have a lot of returning customer revenue. B, if you are on multiple different channels or big organically. What will happen is you'll look in your ad account and Facebook is saying you have a 5 ROAS, you have a 10 ROAS, like things are, you're making so much money. You actually break down, you see,
view through.
yeah, it's all view through conversions. It's not actually real revenue coming in,
Yeah.
right? And so that can be especially dangerous when you're using a cost cap because it's counting that as a sale to then spend more money.
Yes.
And so I've seen nightmare stories with that. And so I only run 7-day click attribution in all of my campaigns. And so when you look at that on service level, it's going to look like it's performing worse, but it looks like that because there's no 1-day view revenue inside.
Yeah,
right?
That's such an unlock that can just trip people up, especially when they're, like they really got organic, YouTube, everything. They got all that firing. Yeah.
And that's why like people ask me all the time about Triple Whale, about Northbeam, about these attribution tools, right? And so for very big brands, I think there is a role for them to a degree. I still think specifically those tools aren't very useful. Specifically what you need like an incrementality tool. So like Haas, or even just running a manual incrementality test. I mean, you could probably get Clawbot to spin one up now. But like the reason why people don't trust Facebook attribution is typically because they haven't factored out the 1-day view sales. They go like, there's no way, like Triple Whale is telling me I have a 3 ROAS. Facebook's telling me I have a 10, right? Like what's going on? The reason it's doing that is likely because Facebook is overinflating 1-day view sales. When you actually compare 7-day click to 7-day click on any of these other tools, it's almost always like very, very close, if not identical in a lot of cases, right? And so I usually find that 7-day click attribution number is more accurate than these tools typically. And so I don't even recommend most people use them unless they're like multi 8 figures kind of minimum. That's my opinion anyway. So, but back to campaign setup, right? So one campaign, the ad set, you're going to run 7-day click attribution. You're going to run just advantage plus audience. And so AKA broad targeting. So there is no, like, if you guys are still running Toff Moff Boff, or you're running interest groups or lookalikes, or that was like a 4 or 5 years ago kind of thing. Like it's been best practice for many a years. It's like run broad. Exclusions. And so again, this is where some people will go exclude website visits and stuff. I wouldn't recommend to do that outside of, again, if you're a very big brand and you're having like frequency issues or something, there's always some form of asterisk here, right? For the 99% of you guys, the only people I'd be excluding are previous purchasers. And the reason for that is a lot of times Facebook will just cannibalize your existing customers to death, and you'll see like 50% of your budget.
How many days excluding purchases though?
Max. So I go max. So 2 things. First thing is that.
So then it's pure new customer. Yeah. Okay.
So you want to try, in my opinion, you want to try and force Facebook to pursue new customers, primarily like solely as the goal of your spend. If you want to hit existing, I would do that in a separate campaign. So I'll still split out and have what I call like an acquisition campaign, which is new customers only, and then I'll have a retention campaign, which is existing customers only. But specifically when you're excluding these people, you want to use 2 audiences. You want to use a pixel audience. So you go in, you make a custom audience and go to the audiences tab in Ads Manager, create a new audience, pixel purchaser is 180 days. That's the maximum time for them to exclude by. What you also need to do as well is you need to set up a CSV audience as well. So you need to download your customer list from Shopify and upload that as a custom audience. You can also, if you guys are using Klaviyo, there's an automatic sync, so you don't have to continue to update that CSV audience. You want to make sure you're using both of those, because if you're just using one, you're going to miss out on like approximately 40% of the audience. So like
the Facebook email doesn't match that.
100%. So like the match rate isn't going to be great on that. So you want to make sure you're using both. All right. And so you have one campaign optimizing for the best attribution, or the most true attribution setting you can use, targeting new customers specifically, running broad targeting, and then running automatic placement. So you're giving a lot of control over to Facebook. What I want to do is you want to set your cost per result goal at your target CAC. All right. And so setting that target CAC, there's some nuance in that depending on what your LTV may be. So like those of you who are first purchase only, it's going to be primarily just based on that AOV number. I also work with subscription brands where we scale at a 0.7 ROAS, right? But that's wildly profitable for them because their LTV grows so much, right? In general, my advice setting that is that you want to have at least like 25 to 30% contribution margin on a customer within 90 days is my typical advice. And so again, there's nuance to that, and so how you can actually come to that number, if for those of you who don't have this established, because I actually think this point is worth hitting on, because a lot of times I will talk to people and I'll ask them like, okay, what's your target ROAS or what's your target CAC, right? And one thing I get back is, well, as big of a ROAS as I can get, like, give me a 10 ROAS, right? Like I'd rather have a 10 ROAS than a 2 ROAS. So why do I have a 2 ROAS, right? The recognition is that as you spend more money, if everything else stays the same, your ROAS is going to go down, right? And so there's a world where you can have a 10 ROAS and spend $100 a day, or you can have a 2 ROAS and spend $10,000 a day, right?
Exactly,
So you're gonna, so the question is, how are you, or at what ROAS or at what TAC makes you the most amount of dollars of profit overall? Generally, and there's nuances again, obviously there's nuance to everything. Generally, that's going to be when you're coming at between 25 to 30% contribution margin within that first 60, 90-day period.
Yeah.
And so take your 60-day LTV, multiply it by your gross margin, subtract out 25% contribution margin, and whatever left over is your CAC.
Magic.
Yeah, 100%. And one thing I think I've just coming back to that scaling, or like as you scale, budget comes down, right? I get a lot of questions as to why that happens. And I think it's a useful frame to understand why it happens, because it gives you a perspective on, oh, how do I actually scale the account? So how do I actually scale while maintaining my ROAS, right? The reason that happens is because if you're spending $100 a day at a $10 CPM, let's say, right? Facebook has to find 10,000 people to show your ad to on a daily basis, right? So Facebook goes, out of everyone in the world, or out of everyone in the countries that I'm targeting, who are the best 10,000 people that can see our ads, right? Now, if you're spending $1,000 a day, right? Facebook has to find 100,000 people to show your ad to, right? Or 100,000 impressions, right? So 90,000 additional impressions. The issue is that Facebook starts at the best impression first, right? So it's like, this guy is the highest intent, warmest, best persona fit. Like, this is the best possible person to see. Every additional person from that point has slightly lower intent, fits the demographic slightly less, has slightly less awareness. And so the fundamental way that you scale the account is you make your ads applicable to a broader and broader and broader group of people. And that's why we're coming back to creative. We talk about why you need a lot of creative and why you need diverse creative, is because nowadays the creative itself is what does the targeting. And so if I have one piece of creative, that is only going to be effectively hitting one audience, one quote unquote audience. Whereas if I have very diverse, different creative, I'm horizontally scaling into these bigger and bigger and bigger groups of people that then allow me to spend more money without my ROAS dropping, essentially, right? And I think that's a helpful frame for people to understand why that happens, and from a first principles perspective of how you scale the account up.
And I just bring it back to, I love the cost cap so much. It's wild how so many people don't know about that. But if you go back to first principles again, what we were just saying before is like starting a brand. Now you just go international first into a bonded warehouse in China. You're shipping on the same sort of rails as Shein and Temu 5-7 days, where we've proven the customer is prepared to wait for that. But when you go global from day one, you just open up all those countries, all that time. The creative works everywhere now. And I did an example of running One Life and City, the partner up an activewear brand, did 850 grand in February with no staff, just her running the whole thing. And it's just cost caps from China. And when they sell out, you can replan into China in only 7-10 days. Where that's the problem, is the air freight over the part. You can, when you're on that cost cap and it's scaling, that's the problem. When you're jumping up 20 grand a day, well, like those cost caps, when it can spend, when it runs out though, and you turn it off, when you turn it back on again, it's the worst when it doesn't start. So
that is the difficulty with using a cost control, is you will have volatility in how much you're selling. When you're using a cost cap, efficiency is fixed. So ROAS or MER will be stable, but volume revenue will change. When you're using, when you're not using a cost cap, when you're using highest volume, which is the default bid strategy, revenue will generally stay pretty flat, but efficiency will go up. Your ROAS may be a 1, then a 3, then a 2, then a 3, then a 4.
That's
and so you have to choose where do you want volatility from, right? In my opinion, it's generally better to have efficiency fixed and have revenue be the thing that fluctuates. And because, so the other thing is, we could just come back to the campaign structure finally, when you're managing this thing in terms of how you manage the budget, because there is still a budget associated with running the campaign, you want to run what's called an inflated budget, which means that your budget in a cost control campaign is how much the campaign is allowed to spend and how much the campaign will spend. So in theory, you can go put $1 million a day of budget in that campaign, and it still may only spend 5 grand or 10 grand, right? Now, don't actually do that in practice, because there's bugs and stuff that happen. But The point being is my general rule is you want to have budget 2 times whatever that campaign is spending on average. So if it's spending $1,000 a day, you want budget at $2,000. If you then see it scale up to 1,500, you want to increase it to $3,000. If you're spending 10K, you want a 20K budget. Like that's
such a good insight. Yeah.
That's how you want to manage that. And if there ever is a scenario where it's like, holy crap, we're selling it through so many units. It's like, how you limit that then. You just reduce the budget. You can always reduce the budget. That budget is essentially the maximum threshold that the campaign is allowed to spend, right? And so I think ultimately the combination of incredible creative infrastructure that produces a really high volume of content that's diverse from one another, deploying that into a cost control campaign in mass, right? And then increasing LTV and increasing returning customer revenue through new drops and new like horizontal products. That's the plan, or that's the framework nowadays. Like those 3 things are effectively what I advise people to do whenever I talk with them. Like that's the playbook.
I love it. We're so aligned on. It's like we obviously seeing the same patterns, seeing the same success. Like of what I've built, Creator Army is that decentralized team. My other one, Ghost Builder, like about building, the brands direct out of China direct, but it's all using the same premise of that first principles and how so much of this has collapsed. And I feel this is where it's so important. I was always that founder, and I always said this, like so many of those D2C founders that you saw were the big ones, were ones in the ad account. I was in the ad account doing a morning stand-up every day for how many years, recognizing the patterns, telling them about the team, getting that feedback loop. And yeah, it is such that nuance. But I would just sort of say, like, it is the thing. It's so, I'm telling everyone, throw there, people are like, oh, I want to plan for an exit in 5 years. It's like, who knows what the world's going to be in 5 years? You need to bring it to right now on that contribution margin, on the profits. Stop building for this brand equity. You think that it's going to be there to sell, because I sort of feel, we're in such a volatile time, those transactions, those deals, you just got to, how do you feel I suppose the last sort of point to touch on, like, so Manus came out, Facebook brought in the ads, analysts, you can do the creative fatigue reporting. There's even like incrementally testing. What's your sort of initial play on that? How do you think brands, and what are some mistakes you're already seeing with the AI sort of side there?
Yeah, no, 100%. I'm very excited, right? And I think I've talked with other media buyers, and they've been like, dude, we're out of a job. like, why are you excited? Right? And like, I guess my perspective of it is, like, I wouldn't necessarily even consider myself like a media buyer first. Like I formerly working with brands, like it was fractional head of growth effectively. So like I was across like multiple paid media channels, creative offers, landing pages, email, like that kind of thing, right? And I think, look, what is going to happen is the people who should be scared, like the junior media buyers, like the uploading of the ads, like the reports, like that's gone.
Yeah.
I think that's going to be very, like, there's already a lot of tools that do that for you automatically in a month, like all that's gone. I think if you have the expertise in the media buying space, especially right now, you're going to be able to build skills documents that other people aren't going to be able to, where effectively, like in my position where I work with a number of different brands at a time, like that gives me the opportunity to work with even more brands, right? Where, because I can systematize the expertise that I have to have greater leverage across it.
And you recognize more patterns, which creates you more valuable.
Yeah, exactly. Because like what I get, if people pay me, right, they're not paying me to click a button on this. Yeah. They're paying me to know what decision to make in the ad account to make the best financial outcome for the business. And so if I'm able to do that at greater scale, like with, like on it, probably at a higher quality as well, because I'm going to have more data to see. Like I'm not going to be, I'm going to be able to use these tools to get more data from the account so I can make better decisions myself in the first place, right? I think I'm very excited, to be honest, where it goes. I think short term, that's where it's headed, where I'm effectively just going to be using Manus to, that's why, by the way, everyone hates the Facebook UI, like uploading ads and everything. If you guys use the ad account, you know how bad it is. The reason why they haven't fixed it is because like they don't care, because Manus is going to be here in a couple of months, and it's not going to, you're just going to use Manus to create the campaigns and stuff in the first place, right? I think medium term, what it's going to become is effectively like a one-man growth team where, and that's when to be honest, I get really excited because I think if you're really good at what you do, like you're going to excel and do exceptionally well in this next period. If you're not, you're going to suffer. Right. And so it's my opinion of it, because I think, if I'm able to command around agents to do what is in my head to get done, right? Like I'm going to have so much leverage that a lot of these brands, like there is no creative strategist and media buyer and editor and graphic designer. It's one growth guy. Like it's like the head of growth, or
the full stack of everything.
Yeah.
I keep saying,
100%. And so I think, and Taylor Holiday has a lot of this as well, but he talks about how like a lot of brands have, like especially larger brands, have gotten really margin compressed over the years. And where this is really going to save them is the reduction in OpEx. Like traditionally you're looking at like between 10 and 15% OpEx.
Yeah.
Like getting the sub 10%, like it is going to be incredibly helpful, not just from employees, but also a lot of the software tools and things that people are paying for like outrageous amounts of money for. I think it's an exciting time overall for ecom long term. Who knows where it goes? Because you can always go super far out in the future, and who knows what'll happen. But I'm very excited to wake up in the morning every day. I think there's never been as much opportunity as there is now. I think that always benefits the people who are the up and comers as well. When there's volatility and things change, like it always benefits the people who are on the come up. So I'm excited.
And if you're watching this, you're one of those people. And like I've never been so excited to work than right now. Like. I'm from Qalo and this, and using that Manus as a sub-agent, using Claude Code as a sub-agent, Codex, Verify, like the stuff that I can build and create. It's like I'm having those holy fucking shit moments, and it's just I can't. It's hard sleeping and stuff because you're just so freaking excited to work and build and create. And if you're watching this, you're definitely one of those. You've gone this far, but Robbie, so. How can they find you? I know you're very sought after. Everyone dreams to get Robbie to peek into their attic, and he's just dropped so much freaking gold there. I actually can't wait. I'm like, some steps that I've made a mistake, and I'm just like, oh shit, I've got to go do that right now. I know that's going to make thousands of dollars of difference a day. So tell us how do they work? Tell us about your offer part, of your new agency.
Yeah. So I'm actually full at the moment, so I can't work with any of you guys, unfortunately. But if you want to, you can always send me a DM at ecomrobbie on Instagram. That's the only place. I'm not on LinkedIn. I'm not on Twitter. I'm not anywhere else. I'm just on Instagram. You guys can see me there. And the next month here, I may open up some availability and be able to take some of you guys on. But try to post some content on there. I get so many messages from people asking me to post and everything. I don't have time as of now, but hopefully YouTube will be in the works. Hopefully more content will be up for you guys. So always feel free to follow me there. And hopefully it'll be valuable.
But yeah, definitely when I've seen your Instagram, it's just like, whoa. It's always what I've wanted to provide in my Instagram is value per second. And I'm like, holy shit, you dropped the bombs on there. It's so good. And this was amazing. And I've got so much out of it. I'm like, shit, I've got to go implement it right now. But thanks so much for coming on.